This podcast is brought to you by Fireside.fm. Podcast hosting by podcasters for podcasters. Now on to the episode.
Today I was thinking, we could talk about getting back into some projects. I've actually dove into, three old projects, and I even started a fourth all yesterday. And I thought that might be a good topic to at least start with. So maybe I'll just kind of dive in really quick since I was doing that, and you can speak at what you've got and see where we land here. But I've got, like I said, three. I think it was three. Yeah, there's one of them was basically just like my command center, which the whole point of that, and I feel like I talk about it enough, but I'll repeat it for anybody new and whatever, is a memory type of thing. Like it has the MD files all over the place, so it's good. I knew that. And why I'm bringing this one up is because I have, with my personal setup, I've gotten really lax about like doing the daily routines that I originally set up. So the way that it was kind of set up was do a morning routine and then do an end of day routine. And then those kind of like put the placeholders or the markers in the MD files to then pick up and have a memory.
Sure.
So that was one instance where it was like not a project, but I also still wanted to be like, hey, what have I missed in the last week in like my personal emails and life stuff. But then the projects, I've got like a video game tracker thing that's just for myself. And that one was one where it was like mid trying to like do stuff. It's been, I don't even know, 6, 7, 8 weeks, maybe something like that.
Yep.
And then another one is a project that we don't need to get into the details too much, but hopefully because I'm getting back into it, we can talk about it more. But that's one that in fact, when we did the episode where we talked about using Get Shit Done as the skill or like, I guess it's a library more than anything. It's a group of skills or plugin. There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
Like that also helped because that plugin already has kind of placeholders and markers and stuff.
Yeah, it plans everything and does the roadmap and has that like memory as kind of a core feature to it.
Exactly, yeah. But it was interesting to just see these three different things where pre-AI, if we didn't have any of this, I probably would have never done any of it, for one.
For sure.
Like I would have been past the point of no return. I never would have been able to recover from it. And in some ways, it's, I think, also because all of my projects, at least the ones I've started in the last, say, 9 months, I do basically tell my Claude, I guess, in the repo, like, I want you to be an orchestrator and I want you to like help me remember. So I've already trained it in a way to help me do this, but just like seeing how it actually works and it actually like is successful is really awesome because not only can I be like, hey, give me an update of, what we were doing last, which it's great at. And, I can also just be like, hey, okay, great. That's awesome. But then like, what was this command we did like 10 months ago or whatever?
Exactly.
And it like actually knows. And so, like deploys are things that I inevitably, when you build a new system, even in this case, like it's on for sell, but like, I haven't even done that. So it was like, wait, what was the way to do it? Stuff like that it's been great. So I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to start with. That's where I've been. Like, what are your thoughts? Have you had any similar experiences with this?
Yeah. I mean, I look at it like this. You get to ask it, what is it that you do here when you come into a project? And I agree completely. I haven't done it as much lately, but remembering when you go, like, whether it's a side project, whether it's a work project, no matter what it is, remembering that, like, hey, I can just ask the AI, like, what have we done in here? And it can go through, give you, like, essentially either, like, the summary of these are the things, this is what it does, this is how you, like, all that type of stuff, or the deep dive of, what are all the features, what's the architecture. It's so powerful. And I think it's almost like a meta layer on top of it. But it's also, like you have to think of it, which is part of the problem. And so it's like remembering, we almost need to build like a skill or something where it's just like the what am I doing here type skill,
Yep.
where it runs through and does that as, part of the process. And I will actually say, I don't know if you've noticed it working in Claude Code recently, they now have memory baked into Claude Code as well. Like I've actually been
Yes.
watching it as it's going in a project and remembering things that we actually talked about, seeing it writing stuff there. And I think that's super valuable. Like, memory is such a weird thing right now where it can be extremely valuable, but it can also be like, are you remembering the right things? Like, is it
Yes.
actually
Yep.
like doing, like having the right context for what you're talking about? And I find it probably helps in Cloud Code because you're always in a project, like you're working in that directory. So it has a very clear delineation of like what memory you're working off of, which is huge. But like if you're in like the regular chat flow, that memory can be like, usually gets pretty right, but it can also conflate things pretty easily as well. So that's an interesting thing to
Yeah.
notice just as a
It-
side tangent to this.
no, I think that actually makes sense. And I saw something that is directly related to this yesterday when I started. So I actually also, because I was able to quickly get up to speed with these three things that I already mentioned, I had another project in mind that I was like, I mean, I should throw Fable at this, is where my
Sure.
head went.
Yep.
Because I've seen a lot of positive things. I really hadn't poked around with Fable much.
Yeah.
And so I decided to, I was just kind of curious, like on the $20 plan, which I'm on for personal stuff like this,
Yep.
like how far can I get with Fable?
For sure.
And honestly, it got really far
Yeah.
in parallel with running all the different things. But the thing I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting is that, and this is something I've been doing more with my work setup with Claude and everything, is I have the command center kind of just like run everything, because in that
Sure.
context, I'm writing less code. I'm the manager, and I am
Yeah.
more reviewing things, but I do also want to like reach out to the repo and say,
Yep.
hey, where is this thing I need to do? Or remind me of this thing. And it's really great about that. And
Sure.
so when I was starting this with Fable, I I actually decided to try starting from my command center and saying, "Hey, you help me plan because
Yep.
I also want you to know about this stuff."
Sure.
But then when I got to the point of, net new, this doesn't exist yet. What do I do?
Yeah.
Should I keep running it from here in my command center and like, let that version of Claude do its thing? And it
Yep.
actually came back to me and it said, actually, I don't think that's a great idea, because then the memory is going to be mixed up with all these different things instead
Sure.
of just the one project.
Yep.
So that's something that I thought was interesting, and that it called
Yeah.
that out specifically. And it made a lot of sense. And I think, again, back to what I do, like with my work machine, makes sense to do it that way because I want everything all
Yeah.
combined. But
Yep.
in this case, it's like, no, the command center stuff for my personal is basically like my emails and my calendar and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I don't need that in this project.
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty
No,
cool.
that makes perfect sense. And that's such a good thing to learn to look for is, and I mean, is this shocking? No, it's context, like managing
Yep.
context. What context are you putting in? But it's easy to kind of like what you were doing there. It's like, oh, like it makes sense to start here. But sometimes you kind of forget to ask those questions. Like, is it actually the right place? Do I need to do something different? And like that's, for me, AI these days, that's one of the huge things that it benefits me is like being able to ask those questions and get a second
Yeah.
opinion. And is it always right? Not necessarily, but it gives you a different way to think about it. But it's also,
Exactly.
and
It's like a rubber duck that actually talks back.
for sure, exactly. If you're, you know, experienced enough, you can tell when you should follow it and when you shouldn't. Like
Right.
I find more often than not when I'm talking to the AI, I've got a pretty good idea of what the answer is going to be or the right answer is going to be, but you get something different. And, because, I don't know everything, obviously. And so I don't pretend that I do, but I at least have like an inclination about it. But it's definitely interesting to see how it responds to it. But I think the bigger thing before we dive into anything deeper is just like, if you abstract what we're talking about here, activation energy is what we're really talking about. It's like, how can you pick
Right.
something up and get started that you wouldn't have done pre-AI by having that as a power that you can use. And like I've always found it where it's like, I want to do this, but how do I even get into it? We talk about this all the time. It's like, if you haven't played a video game in a while, it's like,
Yeah.
I want to play that game, but what are the buttons again? Like where was I in the story? Like it's that type of feeling. And like, I always do that. And I'm like, well, I won't even play it because it'll take me 10 minutes to get back into it. Same thing happens on like
10
the
minutes,
coding
it'll take
side
me
of
2
it.
hours.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's probably more realistic. I never play for 2 hours. So
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that kind of feeling though, like diving into any project where it's just like, oh man, I haven't touched this so long. What was I even doing? And, I think it's actually an interesting way to approach it too. And honestly, like I'd be curious to see like how you feel about it as you do more with it on your side, is like with how quickly AI keeps advancing on the code front. It's like, how can you even, when you jump back in, have it tell you where you were at, get you back up to speed really quickly.
Yep.
But also like, were we even doing the right thing? Like, was this actually the best way? And like,
That was a thought I had. Yep.
Yeah. With Fable being out now, and this is actually something that I just did with Fable this last week is, I've noticed too on the $20 plan, I didn't have it build much, but I had it plan a bunch of stuff. And
Sure.
I mean, I had it running for probably like 2 hours planning stuff. And I still had room to do other stuff with it, like, with Sonnet and stuff like that. But what I noticed is, because I was curious, I was like, how much better is this? And so the work project that I have where it's like the AI stuff for our internal, I just tasked it like, hey, go out, look through everything that we've done here and just like give me recommendations about what's, what could be optimized, what could be better, what are more, modern approaches for it. And I mean, it came up with like 2 huge plans, like one for the like rag and all that type of stuff on the true interactive portion. And then one on the, like, there's a lot of background processes that get kicked off with cron jobs. And the way it was built originally was like, it's pretty sequential. There wasn't really any agentic work happening. Like there was AI involved. It would be like, okay, go out, grab some news, grab some data, do some crunching on it, and then, disseminate it places. Working with Fable, I was able to actually design a new system that is more of like a true agentic background process that isn't just like sequential steps. It actually makes better decisions on like, is it worth continuing to do the next couple steps? How do we actually approach it? And so I definitely noticed that Fable seems to do a really good job planning. Like I said, I kicked that off, did most of the planning, and then ran it through Sonnet to actually start implementing it. And I say Sonnet 5, given that just came out a little bit ago, that definitely, I know a lot of people are like not as happy with it, but I've actually seen pretty good results so far with it.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think that's interesting. You're actually making me think of something too. Like when I went back to the project that was using Get Shit Done,
Sure.
like I am using Opus 4.8, and I had the feeling though, like as I was going through. So if you haven't used that plugin, what it does is it does a lot of good planning things, and it asks a lot of questions. And in this case, I'm using a Rails 8 app, and I've been doing Rails forever, but I haven't done any Rails 8 things. And so I know that there's new things like Kamal and even like not active storage, but solid queue in place of like Sidekick. If you're familiar with those, they're just background job workers. But it was asking me questions about that kind of stuff, which is totally cool. But at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking like, is this overkill? And are we doing it right? And like, should I have Fable kind of reassess? Because it has been, we talked about the activation energy, but it's also been, I don't even know, 2 months at least since I really dove in and like started this project. And it's not even built. It's like halfway built with architecture that maybe I should be reassessing already because it's not at a point where it's done. Right.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That was a thought I had as well that I still might even throw Fable at and just be like, double check my work here kind of thing.
Hey, you've got a day and a half more to get through it. So
yep.
Then we're back on the APIs. So which will be an interesting.
Well, I mean, this is like the second time they pushed it back, though. So
Yeah. Well, I think part of it too, not to go too deep on this type of stuff,
go for
GPT
it.
5.6 Soul just came out. Well, it's been out for a little bit, but they actually just released it to everybody yesterday, I think.
Okay.
And that's supposed to be pretty comparable to Fable, but as of now, OpenAI isn't putting it on API only. So it'll be interesting to see, to your point, that Fable's been pushed back once already. Will they do it again and potentially even permanently do it, given that there's now competition for another model that's at least close? Like, I've seen some conflicting reviews. Like, I know there's several people that are like, this is the best model ever now, like the Soul model. But I've also seen some people that are like, it's really, really good, but there's still things that I'm going to throw Fable at instead of it. And I think it's an important distinction of like, we're getting to a point where, I mean, we've been there for a while, but like, you have to choose the right model for the problem versus being like, Fable's perfect for everything, or GPT 5.6 is like, it's evolving constantly, but it's also, some are better than others. And, I don't know about you, but all of the benchmarks, well, I get we need to have benchmarks so we have a idea. I tend to never feel when using models that they're like, the benchmarks tell the full story. It's like sometimes I have a model that people are like, this is terrible, and it feels really good to me.
Yep.
But then there's other times where I'm like, it's supposed to be a great model and it feels terrible. So I think an important part, and we've talked about this a lot in general, is like, just play with it, like actually experience it and see how it feels to you to figure out what's going to do what you need to best.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing I still struggle with a little bit is like knowing what the differences are between the models.
Yeah.
Like, sure, if I did the exact same thing with, let's just use Sonnet, Opus, and Fable, I'm sure I would see differences.
Sure.
But in like the things that I'm doing right now, and even just like my day to day, when I've used Fable a little bit at work, mostly for like reviewing things.
Sure.
And in that instance, I really didn't see much. Now, granted, it could have been that the code I was looking at was, we'll just call it simple enough that like there really wasn't much nuance there.
Yeah.
But, and I know there are differences, but I do struggle a little bit myself to really have a feeling for, this one's great, or this one lets me down in these places. So maybe what I'm getting at is what you said a minute ago, like knowing when to use which models. Like I base it mostly off of token usage almost.
For sure.
in a lot of ways. And that's fine. That's one way to do it. And maybe as I build some of these projects more, these side projects, I will probably get back to the point where I will start seeing that. But when all you're doing it on the day-to-day for work is like the command center stuff and just like assessing stuff, like you don't need Opus for that. You can use Sonnet for that. Like, and so it is hard to compare, I guess. Maybe that's what's going on for me a lot, but
I think that makes perfect sense. And I've found, and I think we actually talked about this way back in our Gemma 4 conversation when we were talking about that. I'm actually finding more and more, and I think that the consensus is getting to Fable level is actually the most efficient, especially if you care about tokens. Like if you don't care about tokens, if you've got like an unlimited account or infinite money, run Fable through everything. Who cares? But if you actually need to be cost conscious, which I think more and more people are realizing they do, Fable is awesome for creating plans and checking work. And that work can actually be like, okay, plan it, pass it off to like Sonnet because it's cheaper, build it, and then go back to Fable and say, okay, now check this, find holes, and then like you start to get to the agent loop that everybody's talking about. But in my mind, it's a more like controlled agent loop. It's not like run infinitely, because that, like, I don't know if you've noticed it, but if you keep asking the AI if it needs to do something, it's always going to find something. Like I've never seen an AI be
I've
like,
seen that.
This is perfect. It's going to start like veering off into, hey, we could do it this way. Like it's just, so for me, I still am not to a point where I'm like, I'm going to let agents run on something like a programming task infinitely. Like for what you're doing, for like a command center, for like that, second brain, that memory type thing, that's a perfect place to let it run, like not have to babysit it. Because I mean, I'm not saying that, you're not going to find hiccups there, because I've done that stuff too, and it's like,
Oh, it'll still hallucinate and all those things.
yeah, it'll be like, this is super important, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense at all. But
Yep.
then you got to weigh up like how much is it helping you versus hurting you when you have to deal with that type of stuff, which the majority of the time it's far more help than it is annoying. But yeah, it's really just that feeling of, I think we're getting to a point with these bigger models where they're not your daily drivers unless you've got infinite money. Otherwise, they're like your planners and your, it's almost what you were saying. Like, they're kind of the orchestrator. They're not doing the
Right.
work. They're like managing sub-agents that are smaller models doing the work. And, I've noticed a lot, both with Cloud Code and Codex, sub-agents are now like, they've been around for a long time. Like, it's not like this is new.
Yep.
But the actual, harnesses are leaning into them so much harder. And I think it really is like Fable's doing the orchestration, and it's actually passing off to smaller models, and I think that's partially why we're not seeing the usage get, consumed so quickly, is because it is doing that work with smaller models kind of automatically.
Right.
So, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. And you also reminded me too, like, I don't use it for my personal stuff, but I still use Conductor. Sometimes
sure.
I don't actually use it as much, but that's just another harness, and you can use, I actually have Codex in there, or not Codex, I guess, but
GPT.
Yeah, GPT. I don't even remember what
5-ish.
version. I don't use it as much, so I forget.
Sure.
But it's whatever the latest one before the ones you were talking about earlier.
5.5.
Anyways, that's beside the point. But what I have noticed though is, like, because that harness is built specifically as a tool to get code, the programming workflow done.
Yep.
Like, it automatically, depending on what task you do, it will pick the model for you. So
Sure.
I think, I forget if we joked about it, or not joked about it, but even talked about it on here or not, or just joked about it outside of this, recordings. But for a while there, it would actually, when you would have it write a commit message, it would write the commit message using Haiku, but then it would
Sure.
also attribute the code writing to Haiku, because that's who wrote the commit message. And so it's
He was like, come on, guys, you haven't updated me in forever. I'm still here.
Right. It's like, it made sense to downgrade to write the commit message, but then
For sure.
the attribution was total failure. Like, no, you didn't write the code.
This is why Haiku doesn't write the code.
Exactly. But then, well, to be honest, like, that's probably more of a harness failure. Like, the harness should know. But either way, what the more interesting thing is, there's always been a review button since I've used Conductor.
Sure.
And obviously it's just an easy way to just prompt Claude or Codex or whatever to actually run a review. But what I've noticed is, now that Fable is a thing, and at least when you're using Claude, it actually turns it to Fable in the review rather than leaving it at Opus, which was also kind of funny. I'm remembering, because when Fable was disabled, Conductor never fixed that. So every time you'd click review, at least for me, it would launch Fable and say, we can't do that.
Sorry, we're not going to do that for you.
Yep. So that's on the Conductor team, and maybe I just didn't upgrade my version. I don't want to throw bad karma their way or anything, but
no, but I think, it's, I'm sure that's happened. I know it's happened in so many places, but it's an interesting kind of unique issue with where we're at programming right now. It's like, thinking about it, when have we ever had to think about, like, you think about like what programming language you're using, or compiler or stuff like that, but it's never been like, what model am I using to write something, so it's a whole different class of issue where it's like, what, and I didn't really run into an issue, but in one of the products I've built, Think NATO, it was using, I think, GPT-4 mini or something, just to do like really basic type stuff. And they just deprecated. And so it's like, oh yeah, I've got to actually go back in and update my models to make sure that all of this stuff's running. And it's, dependencies, we've always dealt with dependencies. So it's not really that different, but it is a little bit more of a nuance. And I'm curious to see, ChatGPT has already done like kind of the auto model stuff, like routing. I'm curious to see if that really is where we end up, where it's just like, in one way or another, we're going to abstract the model out so that the AI is actually figuring out what AI it should be using versus everybody has to figure out individually.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think, and we've touched on this too, is like it does feel like the harnesses are the
Mhm.
bigger thing to evolve now.
Yep.
Like, yes, the models are still going to get better,
Yeah,
but they are already, and even before Fable, they were so good that it really does come down to like the skills you're using, the harness you're
for
using,
sure.
and there's still a lot to ask for. Like it's lacking a lot in most of those.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's the context problem, but context has evolved so drastically from it used to be. I mean, here's the funny thing.
like our first episode when we were talking about
Yeah.
context or whatever.
Yep. We're like, oh, yeah. I mean, it's still true. And the funny thing to me is that it still works the same too. Like we're still
Yeah.
just dumping context into the chat stream, like, the system
Hmm.
message or whatever it is. But now we just have like shortcuts where like you've got a skill that bundles that up into something and then it just gets injected when you invoke it or when the AI knows you need to invoke it. Like it's interesting to see how these things are not changing and yet changing radically in interesting ways. And just context management when the agent's doing it is also like a whole nother tangent too, where it's like when you compact, that's really
Yeah.
cool, but it's also really dangerous sometimes. And
Right.
so we're doing like, everything's advancing, but it's also still doing the same stuff. It's just like those abstractions on top of it.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is also reminding me of when I did get back into the project that is using get shit done. So I
Yep.
basically I got up to speed like we talked about, and then I kicked off the the planning phase, I guess it was, which we
Yep.
talked about.
Yeah.
And then it got to the execute phase. And a lot of the execute phase was actually spinning up, I think, like four different sub agents.
Yep.
And the interesting thing there is like and this gets to what we were just talking about with like, is Claude or even ChatGPT, are they going to pick the model for you? And at least in this case, like I was running Opus 4.8 when
Yep.
I started it, and then I could just watch my tokens or my session usage just burn right through it,
Oh
which is
yeah.
very
Yep.
interesting because like I was doing Fable stuff in a different window, but not using nothing nearly as
Yeah.
intense. But
Yep.
when I had four sub agents, it was like I think I was maybe at 40% usage, and
Sure.
then it burned it to I think it got to like 99, and I was about to ask it a question like, "What's gonna happen here? Like, are you gonna be able to pick this back up?" And it got done, and I was like, "Okay, phew, sweet."
That's
But
I will actually say that's one of the things, and I'm curious if Cloud Code's gotten here because like I constantly hit limits. Like I'm always pushing it because I also have this compulsion where I'm like, okay, how much do I have left and how many days do I have left? And like I'll
yeah,
just push things, being like I'm gonna get my full usage out of this, and so
it is kind of like a min max game sometimes
it
for
is,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But I've noticed that codecs within the last couple of months, if you've kicked off a job and it hits the limit, it'll like
Yep.
show you the message and stop you from executing anything else, but it'll just keep going. It'll go until it actually finishes whatever active work it was doing. And then it'll be
Interesting.
like, okay, you can't kick off anything else, but it does actually execute until it gets done. I noticed yesterday, and this was when I was executing on the Fable stuff I had planned,
Yep.
it kind of did the same thing, but it was like the main orchestrator kept working, but it kept trying to kick off sub agents, and those would fail.
Okay.
And I actually haven't had time to go back and look. I'm a little concerned that it didn't actually finish the work because like it told me at the end, like after I got my session reset, it's like, oh yeah, we're all done, we're good. And I'm like, did you actually finish the work that the sub agents didn't? And so I'm gonna have to explore that. But it did actually like go through the full process before it quit, even though I was out of my session usage. So I think it might be getting there as well, which I think is super helpful. Like the killing
Hmm.
right in the middle was just so frustrating because it's like, I mean, I get it, you're out of usage, but at the same time, it's a terrible user experience.
Exactly, and that was my thought too. It's like if I've essentially like these were like 3 web searches basically
Yeah.
that it
Yep.
was conducting, and I'm sure there's a way that they could probably get there, but at the same time,
Sure.
like these subagents don't have the context while they're
Yep.
starting that, hey,
No.
I've only got 10% left or whatever.
Yeah.
So you would, if you were actually going to follow through on that, you'd have to like what, cut them off like right
Pretty
in the
much.
middle of it and be like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, sum it up now, but that's still going to burn tokens.
Well,
It's
it,
like,
it doesn't sum it up. It just literally stops. Like it
no,
does
I know
not.
it doesn't, but I'm saying
Yeah.
like if you could even
Yeah.
plan for that, that's
Yep.
also going to burn tokens to like, okay, sum
Oh,
it
yeah.
up now. And like,
Yep.
it is kind of a weird thing, and obviously we're not going to solve it, but yeah, that's interesting to see. Like, you've run into it clearly more than I have, but that was, and I didn't quite, I guess, run into it, but it was like just
Sure.
getting up to that point where it's like, okay, what's going to happen here? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
And
Well,
again, maybe going all the way back to where we started is like, could we then, when we get our session tokens back or whatever, our usage back, could we pick it back up? Probably wouldn't be that hard,
Yeah.
but
You just
it
say
would,
keep
it's
going.
still kind of this
It'll pick it
weird,
back up. But to your
yeah,
point though, like I've definitely had it where I'm like in the flow, generating stuff, actually like actively going back and forth. Then it stops. Then I have to wait for a couple hours, and then I forget that I was even running it. And so it's
yeah,
like that is
I've
a
done that
problem
too.
where like it's losing that thread, and then you've got to go back into it. And it's like, okay, what were we doing again? And like, so I think it does all kind of tie into what we're talking about is like use AI to get you off the ground, like get some momentum going, whether it's a new project, whether it's, man, I don't feel like working today, but it's like, okay, kick this thing off, get something started. And then you get that dopamine hit of like, okay, here's the thing. And you're like, oh, cool. Okay, let's do the
Yeah.
next one. And you keep pushing. And so, like, lowering that activation energy just to get something started is such a huge value to me for using AI.
100%. Yeah. And maybe that's a good place to just kind of wrap things up. I think it is definitely making people way more productive. It's making both of us way more productive, which is like, it's not even an argument at this point.
Yeah.
But there are still challenges. And I think in some ways, that's almost the more interesting thing now is like,
Yeah.
how do we navigate these challenges? How do we get the activation energy? Because even then, it's not always easy. And,
No.
still like, we don't need to dive too much more into this, but like there is yes, we can get AI to help us with it. But even then, sometimes it's just kind of like, but then I got to like remember where like the next thing was or whatever. And
Yep.
AI can help with that too. But
For sure.
yeah, so I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, but yeah.
No, I think we're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this has been fun. It's good to talk about this kind of stuff and just,
Yeah.
the little day-to-day things you run into that I'm sure a lot of people that, might listen to or watch this video have also run into it. So, feel
Well,
free to reach out,
yeah,
leave
I think
comments,
it's
go
important
ahead.
too. Just to throw the note in there is that like I know a lot of people talk like they've got AI locked down 100%. Like it's perfect
Yeah.
and they never run it. Like it just runs my life for me. And I don't agree with that. I think that that's either you're not using it very hard or something. So it's really that hopefully people can relate to this, like see that the real, like we use it all the time and there's still bumps, and
Yep.
it's fun to explore it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a new version of the challenges we used to have with just
Yeah,
coding without AI agents.
for sure.
Now the challenge is more around just like, how do we optimize? How do we
Yeah.
get the most out of these agents? And, and just the fact that they're so good at what they do now is
Yeah.
pretty awesome. So,
For sure.
all right, cool. Well, thanks for watching and listening. And, feel free to go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Give us 5 stars if you want. That'd be awesome. Like and subscribe on YouTube. And yeah, we'll see you next time.